Welcome back to Hardball. Well, some of the toughest fighting in the war against ISIS is taking place in the city of Kobani in Syria. That city has been under siege and surrounded by ISIS forces for the last 2 months, while Kurdish fighters are holding on. NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel was one of the few Western journalists to see the fighting there firsthand and at great personal risk, obviously. Here's Richard's report from the Syrian border.
Chris, in Kobani, sometimes the Kurdish defenders of the city and the ISIS militants are just 20 yards apart. In some cases, just one street will separate the two. They'll be in one building, the ISIS militants will be in another. And the Kurdish defenders know if they're captured, they'll be killed or tortured, or the women could be sold into slavery. In fact, many of the Kurdish defenders keep a bullet in their pockets. They call it the bullet of honor, and it's for themselves. They would commit suicide rather than be taken prisoner. And it is that intensity that that drives the people of Kobani. Right now, it's unclear who has the upper hand. They each hold about half of the city. The defenders of Kobani are not out of the woods yet. They are completely dependent on supplies from the outside world, ammunition, food, weapons, and if that supply line were cut, they could probably lose Kobani in a matter of days. The U.S. has been helping with airstrikes. Without those airstrikes, Kobani would very likely have already fallen. The battle in Kobani, however, is just one front in this multinational war against ISIS, and as the president said, he's sending more troops into Iraq, 1,500 more troops, dedicating billions more dollars. But the Iraqi army needs a great deal of help. The Iraq strategy is very divided, frankly. You have the Shiite government, which is becoming increasingly sectarian and allied with Iran. You have the Sunni tribes who are being massacred and not being able to stand up to ISIS. And then you have the Kurds in the north who have all but declared their independence. So it's hard to see how an extra 1,500 troops are going to make much of a difference, Chris.
Thank you very much, NBC's Richard Engel. Richard will have an in-depth look at the battle against ISIS this Friday night at 9 Eastern here on MSNBC. We're joined right now by the Roundtable former Republican chairman and MSNBC political analyst Michael Steele, Christina Bellantoni, who's editor-in-chief at Roll Call, and Howard Fineman, who's editorial director of the Huffington Post Media Group and an MSNBC political analyst. Howard, this war we're in, we have to keep reminding ourselves we're at war, but we're in war in a kind of a diminished capacity. We have 1,500 people over there now. The president's asking for 1,500 more in a war that involves fighting 30,000 Islamic zealots, killers. Where are we at on this?
Well, Chris, I talked to a couple of people on the Hill yesterday who follow this kind of thing very closely, and they say the 1,500 troops is really a drop in the bucket if we are going to fight off the kind of attack that ISIS represents. So it's not clear to me exactly what the strategic purpose is, other than to show that the United States is going to be on the scene, mostly from the air, not from the ground. And if we are going to protect every city, if we're going to help protect Kobani, then there are going to be 15, 20, 30 other cities, you saw the map there, that we're going to have to do the same thing in. And I think the president has got to look at the possibility that the last 2 years of his presidency are going to be spent kind of refighting in a miniature scale in another country the war that he promised to unwind and did in Iraq.
Well, Christina, how do you fight a war and win it if all you're doing is playing defense point by point? I mean, the way you describe it, of course, they can keep trying to take these cities. Eventually, they might take them or move on and take some other city. But they're always on the offense. We've got a pretty puny force of advisors over there against a zealous army that believes God is with them.
Yeah, this is one thing that you've had people be concerned about, both in the White House, on Capitol Hill, and then, of course, look at the American public. You haven't seen the anti-war forces really activate or engage, but how does it go with those extra 1,500 troops? You know, are we going to be seeing, you know, our folks come back here, you know, injured, dead, worse, any of those things happen? That's something that could really change anti-war sentiment here, which exactly could mark the last 2 years.
Well, what's the partisan divide, Michael? Is there a partisan divide? I get the feeling Republicans are going to make this guy, the president, make a case. Your party has historically been the more hawkish party. So where is it on this war?
Well, I think there's a little bit of division that's still beneath the surface for a lot of Republicans. You've got the Rand Paul wing that's emerged very vocally in the last year or so. You've got the neocons represented by McCain who want to push, and will push now that he's assuming leadership of an important committee in the Senate. So I think there's a little bit of division there, but I think you make the point. The broader point is they want to know what the president wants to do here. I think Christina's right. This idea of just sending in 1,500 troops, most Republicans will tell you that is not enough of a commitment if you're going to be serious about this. You're just playing around the edges. And whether or not the administration pulls the trigger to commit more goes against what Howard just laid out, which is, Mr. President, you said we were coming out of engagement in the Middle East, particularly Iraq, and now we're going back.
I think they're going to let. I think what cynically, politically, what they're going to want to do is let them hang.
That's right.
They're going to let them hang. There'll be some people like McCain calling for many more troops, but in fact, the Republican Party doesn't want to commit to 200,000 troops in Syria. They'll criticize Obama in both directions.
There's still a very vocal push on the Hill as well to have a vote to authorize this military force, because you've seen some anti-war liberals want to do that. People want to be on the record here, and
instead
with the
of
new
letting the
Congress
president do it
coming
alone,
it's going to be a mess.
And of course, to the 2016 question, now you're all of a sudden, this becomes a hook for the Hillary Clintons and the Rand Pauls and others out there who are going to be looking at a presidential bid beginning in 2015, and the backdrop to that bid is going to be.
Okay, let's
they're going to claim they want to vote, but they don't really.
Okay, let's run through this. Each one of your feelings on this, because you have feelings about America and our country, and imagine being one of those soldiers over there, one of those 3,000 soldiers. When we have our complete complement over there, they're risking their lives because they can be picked off. And what are they fighting for? A united country, or are they fighting for what?
Well, Chris, you're asking this question.
Who are they fighting for?
You're asking this question on Veterans Day. So,
yes.
It couldn't be more urgent. And I think if I were in the armed service right now and I were being asked to go, I would go unquestioningly for my commander-in-chief, but I would ask in my mind, whose side are we really on here? What is the real objective? How do we know when we've won? Or even how do we know when we haven't lost? And all of those questions are unanswerable at this point. And I don't see any clear way to answer them anytime soon. I just don't.
It feels a lot like how it felt leading up to the surge, right? You had this same feeling. You're hearing this from troops, wondering, why are we there? What is our exit strategy? People back home wondering, when would it end? And then all of a sudden, President Bush sends more troops. Things started to unwind, and the economy became the focus instead. But this is all really leading up to a lot of questions.
And what started out as a humanitarian mission. We had folks stranded on a mountain, as we recall this episode beginning.
The
Yazidis is now turned into something else. And it is the something else that not only our troops, but certainly a lot of Americans are going to start to question openly. And the president had better be prepared with an answer. And the sense, at least from the administration so far, is we don't really have one yet.
This is weird because it's reactive. And we all reacted emotionally to the beheadings. If they wanted to get us out of that war, just stop beheading our people. The American people wouldn't even be thinking about it. If they want to keep us on, keep beheading people every couple of weeks or months. That's what got us in there. So we got to worry about anytime we get into a war situation, which is totally reactive, they're manipulating us. That is scary. And by the way, during the surge, at least the conservatives in this country, the Republicans, if you will, generally supported the war.
Yeah.
Which party now supports the war? Neither one does. And that's horrible. But you can't find any clump of people at home that are with you. The roundtable's staying with us. We're going to talk about Mitt Romney, who seems to be reemerging to run for president. He says he's not, but everything he's doing says he is. He's out there scrambling for the money. That's a good sign. He's running. This is Hardball, the place for money. Actually, the place for politics. We're back with the roundtable. Michael, Christina, who's been here before, and Howard. But Mitt Romney, by the way, denies he's seriously thinking about running for president. We're back with the roundtable. Michael, Christina, who's been here before. We're back with the roundtable. Michael, Christina, who's been here before, and Howard. But Mitt Romney, by the way, denies he's seriously thinking about running for president. How do you believe any politicians anymore? Yet everything he says, all his actions otherwise look like he's running. Robert Costa reports, for example, according to several top Republicans, Romney made more than 80 phone calls to GOP candidates last Tuesday and Wednesday, including Senate candidates Joni Ernst of Iowa and Tom Tillis of North Carolina, to congratulate them on their victories. In the days after the election, a group of Romney's supporters began circulating a memo that compared the success of his midterm endorsements with those made by Hillary Clinton, of course, the frontrunner for the 2016 Democratic presidential nomination. Wonder why they would do that, Howard.
Well, in the small bore game of revenge, don't forget that Mitt Romney can't stand Chris Christie. So anything he can do to mess around with Chris Christie's possibilities.
Remember what Chris Christie did? Remind us of what he did. If you're coming to Jersey for a nickel, come through my large body, or you're not getting a nickel.
So there's that. That's the small-minded part of it. The generous-minded part of it is that people have said to him, you know, you would have been a better president than this guy who's
That's showing up in the polling. Christina, the polls all show that people are having buyer's remorse on the president. Of course, it's the time of year of the presidency when they do. Even W is out there saying people get kind of tired of you. But here's Mitt Romney. Everything, he looked good. He looked like previous presidents. He had the jaw and the whole thing. He looked good, and he was well-educated. He spoke well. He was a gentleman. He lacked what I would call a political personality, however. Can he get one between now and next year? Can he go shop for one?
And the people that are trying to advance this story, donors, top strategists that are close to him, they think he would have been the better president. They want to see him run again. So a lot of this is
one of them,
right? They're trying to, but don't forget,
Christina, he's one of them.
Hillary Clinton is one of the first people to make a phone call when you win, right? That's Senate candidates across the country have been saying that for several years. Your phone rings, it's her on election night. I don't know how many people you call on election night to congratulate them, but you stay engaged. You want to be the
Does she call the losers?
That's some of them. Some of them, yeah.
Jimmy Carter built an entire campaign in 1976 by going around the whole country to everybody lost a primary general and established a relationship with him. And that's how he built a campaign for Jimmy who. Pretty smart.
It is pretty smart. And I think, from Romney's perspective, it is staying in the conversation. Now, there is...
Is that all it is?
I think right now it is. I think to Christina's point, there's a lot of people who have the love for him to go out and do it again.
Okay,
But he's just staying,
can I get beyond it since I don't have to worry about my old friends in the RNC like you have to worry about? Howard,
yes.
Let's talk about this totally as we always do around here.
Yeah.
Think it through the way a Powell does. There's two categories of Republican candidates. Somebody on the right's going to win.
Exactly where you're going.
And somebody on the establishment left, not left of the Republican Party is going to win. If Christie gets in trouble legally, and it's fair to say we don't know yet if he'll be tagged by this thing, or somebody close to him, like the people he claims he doesn't even know anymore, or if Jeb decides not to run, huge opportunity for Mitt to say, well, I never thought about it before, but now it's open.
He'd still have Rob Portman standing in his way.
I can handle that.
I'm just kidding. Okay. So, yes, that's exactly what he's thinking. And also, don't forget, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink.
What else are you going to do?
He's no, that's not. He looks great. He looks model.
Oh, I think you meant he had plenty of free time to run for president.
No, he looks good. He doesn't look a day older than he looked a few years ago. And you're right. If Chris Christie self-destructs, if Jeb says, I'm not going to do it, there's a hole a mile wide for Mitt Romney.
By the way, you spent your whole life wanting to be president. Why would he change his mind?
Exactly.
I think
Hillary Clinton got beaten. She's back.
Than a mile because you're discounting individuals who I think could make a real run. Kasich, Pence, and others. Governors.
Which one can beat Romney?
I think Pence and Kasich could give him a nice run. Absolutely.
Pence has got a hell of a personality, doesn't he?
Well, but I'm just saying, they're currently in the mix. They're in the mix.
Kasich, I agree with you on.
He knows what he did wrong.
Right.
And so this is where he's like, oh, well, I'm going to want to try again. Maybe. But this is a big, wide open Republican.
Politics is
I'm not going to count on anything.
It's like Groundhog Day.
Look,
they all think they can win eventually if they just keep correcting the mistake they made the day before. Hillary's also getting this. If I just fixed the problem I had yesterday, you know what I mean? I shouldn't have said that about corporations. I'll fix that tomorrow. What they have to be good at is what Clinton was good at. Anticipating the next question and giving the brilliant answer to that. And that's what a politician is.
Because any Romney campaign is going to start with left off on the very question.
Okay, thank you. This is fun. And by the way, I'd rather talk about this than war or Ebola. By the way, we have to have some dessert around here once in a while. And this was our strawberry shortcake. Anyway, thank you, Michael Steele. Thank you, Christina Bellantoni. And the reason we talk about this is we like to do it. Howard Feynman, thank you, my buddy. When we return, let me finish with my thoughts this Veterans Day, and that is very important. You're watching Hardball, the place for politics.